Another proud Canadian and a guy that had the privilege to sit on the bench for the national team of Canada as an assistant. First-timer Alan Errington joining us. Alan, welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Looking forward to it.
Pleasure's all mine. Alan, let's go first way back. Let's go back before we get into the nuts and bolts. I can never forget, I still have the VHS tape when Canada and Australia in the wee hours of the morning go deep into extra time, on and on and on. Give us, a way back flashback and the feeling in that locker room and the mentality of those players that left it all out there.
Well, we had a good team then, and we actually felt a bit aggrieved that we lost to Mexico in Toronto in the final game. Don't forget, in those days, there was only 24 teams qualified for the World Cup, and in '94, there's only one team qualified. That was the US, were the host nation, so they were in. There's only one more team from CONCACAF qualified. And we were right down to the last game. I think there's a lot of people from Toronto obviously at the game, and we lost 2-1. Hugo Sanchez scored late on in the game. And if we'd won that game, we're in the World Cup. And we get more money for qualifying. There's more money in the programme, and it was a big deal. However, we had to go to Australia. We played to a tie there, and we went to penalties and lost on penalties. It was a bit of a heartbreaker. It was a real tough one to lose because we really thought, and I still believe to this day, we were good enough to qualify for that World Cup. And I remember the game in Toronto. The one that really burns me is we should have won that game against Mexico. There was a few issues during the game that we were a bit upset about, but we had a good team. I think that was the best chance we had since 1986 of qualifying. And then the next World Cup in '98, we actually finished top of the group and went into the Hex, and it fell apart there for other reasons that we had, getting players in and what have you. But we had a good team then, and I think the reason we had the good team, Anthony, was we were a product of the players we had played at a good level. And I look at the team now, and I think they've got good players as well, and should have qualified for the Hex. But really, is that the goal? The goal should be to qualify for the World Cup. We never mentioned the Hex when we were coaching.
And I love that mentality, Alan. And that's the mentality, honestly, Alan, let's get right to it. That's the mentality that lacks here in Canada. It lacks at the local youth clubs, the academies. We don't ingrain that. I think we're too soft. I think we give out medals and trophies for everything. And we're not properly developing. We're not properly, speaking to the minds of these players in what they need to be looking for. We need to have, I think you tweeted out, Alan, we need to have some of the under-15s, the under-17 teams go to Honduras and play games. El Salvador, Jamaica. Agreed or not, Alan?
Absolutely, 100%. And we used to do that when our youth teams were qualifying. We used to go and play in those countries and win. We qualified for the Youth World Cup in 1985. Went to Russia. We qualified at the next Youth World Cup. Went to Colombia. It was a gimme that we were going to be in the Youth World Cup. Never mind just qualifying for the last few. We would always, the program demanded that we had success, and we did have success. And to talk about developing players, and it really irks me because there's a word that you're not supposed to use anymore in the game here. It's called winning. And it's all about what they keep talking about developing. What are we developing players for? Where are they going to go? Let me tell you my thoughts on a professional player in Europe or anywhere else in the world for this matter. From the younger ages, players play in an academy. That's what they do here. From 16 to 18, they play in the reserve team for the club where they go to. 18 to 20, they're in and out of that first team, getting first-team experience back in the reserves and getting in and out. 20 to 25, they're in the team, steady, learning the trade, regular players. 25 to 30 years of age, they're in the prime, they're the best players, they're in the prime. 30 to 35, they're playing with experience and a good head. After that, some of them will get into coaching. In Canada, 11 to 18, we play in a club or a development or an academy. 18 to 40, pub league. That's the reality of where we are in Canada. I hear there's a league coming, and I'm pretty sure there is.
Yep, let's talk about that.
You have to have that in place. If we don't have that in place, you're wasting your time.
Well, let's talk about that next. And I tweeted that out, the exclusive scoop I had last week about a new Canadian league, hopefully getting off the ground in 2018. The first phase is done. I worked back in the Canadian Soccer League, Alan, back with the North York Rockets for 2.5 years as an assistant GM. And a lot of those players went on to success with the national team and over in Europe. Paul Pescasolido, John Califf, Alex Bumber. We could go on and on and on. These were pros. These were guys that cut their teeth there, and then they went on to bigger and better success. This is where I believe this league is massively important for the country of Canada. Let's talk about that and your thoughts, and then we'll move on to the head coach.
it's the biggest reason we're not in the World Cup now. In 1987, when the league started, it was brand new and it took a bit of getting on its feet. We really had a good league. Some of the games between Vancouver, Hamilton, North York, Toronto, Montreal were cracking games. Winnipeg beat us in the final in the last game we played, and we won 4 out of 5, and Winnipeg beat us with a BC player scoring. Stevie Miller. Corazon played against us in that game. And the league was so important because you've got players having a platform now to develop and become good players in a good league. It was getting better year by year. And then off they go to Europe or the MLS, and they graduate to stronger teams and become better players. So when you need them for the World Cup team, they're ready. They're better players. They're being developed. Never mind the youth tour. They're being developed in a good league. The league was in trouble. We were losing about $400,000 a year for the league, and we were going to fold. So the league president at the time, or the commissioner, Dale Barnes, went to the CSA and says, listen, the league's going to fold. Can you help us? We've got a proposal. If you will get $1, put $1 on every kid in Canada, it'll be more than enough to keep the league afloat. Let's keep it going. For every player that pays $1 under the age of 12, we'll give them a free season ticket. They'll close this club. CSA said no. They killed the game right there. That's the main reason we're not in the World Cup since 1986.
Wow, God bless Dale Barnes. That brings a smile to my face, and it warms my heart to think about Dale Barnes and what he meant for Canadian soccer. He had his heart and his mind in the right place. So let's get to the head coaching position, Alan. I got to tell you, I'm still shocked and surprised that Benito hasn't resigned. Anywhere else in the world, it would have already happened. But again, we live in Canada, so these things have to take time and a process. That's fine. Here's where I stand, and you and I went on this on Twitter, and many others still today. I believe in my heart of hearts there's not one single Canadian coach out there ready that has the CONCACAF region experience, that has the pedigree, that has the fiber that we need to win in CONCACAF. God bless Nick Dasovich. I had him with the North York Rockets. He failed with the under-20s. Bottom line, that's the truth. Mark Watson, I'd use him as an assistant. He doesn't have the language. He doesn't have what it takes to get us to the Hex and to a World Cup. Your turn, Alan.
I agree with you. Why isn't Mark Watson or Nick Dasovich assistant coach instead of Floro's son, who's got no qualifications and never coached a team before in his life? Why is he not in the coaching staff? Why are we not developing coaches as well as players? Because unless we develop both, we're going nowhere. I think you look at the games we've played. We should have won in El Salvador. We didn't play the right way in Honduras. And you're right. Why hasn't he resigned? I guess I wouldn't resign either. If you resign, you lose your money. If you don't resign, they'll sack you and you get paid up. So maybe he's not resigned because he wants the money. But the way it is in football around the world, if the team plays well and wins, they're all good players. If they don't play well, they fire the coach. That's just a matter of fact. That's the way it is. And I'm surprised that we waited so long to hear something from the CSA. I don't know whether they're waiting to announce something about the league and do that at the same time, but I cannot believe that his son is now in charge of the Pan American Games team and he's not qualified. That should be a Canadian. We should be developing Canadian coaches as well as Canadian players.
Well, I couldn't agree with you 100%. That I was shocked at, I was upset and disgusted at, because at least the Canadian should have been in charge of the Pan Am Games. At least
I'd say the same about the MLS, Anthony. I would rather see a Canadian player playing poorly, trying to learn the trade, than an American player playing for a Canadian team playing poorly as well. I'd rather see a Canadian doing it, give him a chance. And they're not getting the chance. It's not like the old NASL where they were classed as North Americans. Now we're foreigners if we go anywhere else. So that's also got to change. And the CSA, I believe, are working on that, but they've got to get their act together and get that sorted out.
Right, but with all due respect, Alan, it's not up to the Vancouver Whitecaps, Toronto FC or Montreal Impact to feel sorry, to give a spot to a Canadian player. Maybe he's not even good enough. And then if they do, because of the public pressure, put him on the bench to rot, not getting the time he needs. So, you know what? I don't need them. I need our own league so our own players can play 100% of the minutes. And then when American players don't get the opportunity down south and they come knocking up here, say no.
No, I agree with you. There has to be a Canadian league to develop them. But if the MLS is classed as better league than what we have in Canada, then the better players will graduate to the MLS. But they're handicapped now because they are classed as foreigners. I don't know if that happens in hockey or in baseball or in any other sport, but in soccer, it seems to be that they're classed as foreigners. That's got to be sorted out, and the CSA have to get onto that. And maybe the Canadian government get onto that as well and say, why is this happening? Because it's hurting us. We keep talking about developing players. We're developing players to go nowhere. There's nowhere to go. At 18, you cast aside, you go and play pub league football. We have to have a league. And even though we get a league, And if we get a good coach, and you can sign any coach you like, and I have no problem with Bradley or Arena coming in and doing it. You could get Guardiola or Marino to come in. They wouldn't have success either. They would look at the job and turn it down because we don't have the infrastructure to run a program that's going to qualify for us in CONCACAF. We're miles behind. And when we do, if and when we get this league, I predict it will take 15 to 20 years for the league to develop, to get our players up to scratch enough and enough experience to qualify for another World Cup.
You're bang on. Alan, I could talk to you all night. You're a fountain of knowledge. You have the experience. You've gone through the CONCACAF region. You know the Canadian system. The last thing I want to discuss with you in the last couple of minutes before we close it out is simply this. Look, I was born here in Canada. I'm a proud Canadian. I've said this for the last 30, 35 years of my life. If Canada ever were to play Italy in a World Cup game, it would be a dream of mine to sit down with my two sons and have a Canada jersey on. I could care less about Italy. I've seen Italy win a World Cup, go to Euros, on and on. I think our problem here still in this country, Alan, is this. The Portuguese will support the Portuguese. The Italian will support the Italian. The Scottish, the English will do the same. The South, on and on and on. And we are not taking pride like the Americans take pride down south on everything stops when it's game day for USA. Everyone is trying to produce the next American player. Here, everyone wants to send their little Johnny, Stevie, or Mark to Portugal, Benfica, Italy, Juventus, to Arsenal, England. And this is our problem, Alan.
There's nowhere to go. There's no stepping stone or platform for them to display their wares on and say, he's a good player, we'll give him a chance. There's no way Alex Bundy would have played for Maritimo or West Ham if he hadn't played in the Canadian Soccer League. Pesha Salido got his start. Jason DeVos got his start in the Canadian Soccer League. So it's a great platform to be seen and looked at. And they're learning, they're training every day. You've got professional players. When we had 10 teams in that league, there's 300 players roughly, maybe 250, 300 players training every day and playing in a... Some people say it was semi-pro because it wasn't full-time for some of the players. Some players were. But they're doing it every day and they're playing at a better level. And by the end of the CSL, before it folded, it was a quality league. There was some very good games and there were some very good players. And there's always that rivalry, and it should still exist between the East and the West. And I think you're winning the battle now because there's not many players coming from the West. That's another issue we could talk about back here on our own and try and get our own house in order here. We don't have enough players from BC on the national team where we used to. So there's something got to change there as well. And again, without a place to play, we can talk forever about who should coach and what they should do and what have you. We're never going to qualify for the World Cup until the players are comfortable on the ball, they can play, and they act like professionals. Right now, with all due respect, there's some very good players, but we're not good enough. If you look at the old NASL when we were in the World Cup in '86, and I was on the staff, I was a staff coach for the World Cup in '86. If you look at the players then, they were all playing with Pele, Beckenbauer, Cruyff, Kroll. You know, they're playing with some top players, George Best, and they're learning every day from those players. And with all due respect to players now, some of them played second, third and fourth division. Some of them don't play for 15 games and come and get a game for Canada. I look at the team that played in this tournament, and I wonder how many would have got into our team in '94 or '98, certainly in '94. And I tell you, there's only maybe 2 or possibly 3 that I would think. I mean, Atiba would be a cert. He's a quality player, and I feel a bit sorry for him. But the rest of the players, if you look at the team we had, and we were 20 minutes away from being in the World Cup. This night and day, we were better players then. What's gone wrong? What's happened that we're not as good as we used to be? And I know I'm an old guy, and people want to hear, oh yeah, the olden days. The stats prove it. We won then. We were a good team then. And the common denominator is always the same.
Absolutely.
We have a league.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Alan. It has been a pleasure. It has been a joy having you on. You brought me back as a 16-year-old Ian Bridgie. He was with us with North York for a bit over the bar against France. I still remember as a teenager jumping, hitting my head almost, and thinking to myself, I almost saw my nation score against France, against that world-class team. That would have been something. Alan.
Well, I broke my cheekbone in North York in the warm-up, if you remember, but there you go, that's another story.
Those were the days, Alan. God bless you for making time. I know that your heart and your mind is in the right place for Canada. So is mine and so many others. That's why we need to speak up. That's why we can't be silent. I don't care about your age. I want you to speak up because we need people to start a revolution. So once and for all, my grandkids, your kids, on and on, we can watch Canada before we leave this earth in another World Cup. Alan, thank you so much again. Don't be a stranger on the show, my friend.
Great show. Thanks for having me. Love it.